everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Evidence, the podcast where we dive deep into true crime cases, uncovering the facts and exploring the unanswered questions that keep us coming back for more. I'm your host, Marv, and I want to thank you for joining me today. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can find links to my PayPal and Cash App in the description. Now, let's get into today's topic.
In the shadows, where the truth lies, Marv's on the case, with justice in her eyes. Unsolved mysteries, voices lost in time. She digs deeper, uncovering the crime. Beyond the evidence, she'll fight the fight. Beyond the evidence, where justice matters. Marv's the voice for the voiceless, breaking all the patterns, facts and theories, clues and controversy. Join the journey, uncovering the mystery. This is Beyond the Evidence, where justice prevails, with Marv leading the way. Truth never fails. Now get ready for this live stream. Super chat, highlight your message. Don't fall victim to the irrelevance. Hit that like, share, subscribe to Marv's Beyond the Evidence.
There I am. Hello, everyone. How are you? Just want to make sure that everybody knows. Thank you so much for waiting till today to watch this. We got back late, and by the time we ate dinner and everything, we were tired. So, thank you once again. I'm going to bring Bossy in with me, so hang on just a minute. Bossy, how are you? Bossy, are you there? You're on mute.
Okay.
Oh, there she is.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear
Okay.
you.
I am driving home.
Oh, okay.
I'll be there in like maybe 15 minutes or so, but I don't mind still being on here, and then I'll get the my laptop set up so I can watch chat then. I just came out of the woods, obviously. It's mushroom hunting season.
All right. And you have notes from that one call, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I absolutely do. Absolutely.
All right.
And that's a little ways, still a little ways in, isn't it?
Right.
Okay.
Hello, Cyber Warrior and Mark. How are you? Miss
Hi
Emily.
to everyone.
Maria's here. Jerry's here. Andrea's here. I'm going to have to say Jerry's Andrea, and then my Andrea's here. And Ilanda, nice to see you. All right. Well, we've got a lot more people watching. They just don't chat, but welcome to everyone tonight. This is going to be a recap of day 3 of the Flint Farmer trial. This took place yesterday, and it was hurry up and wait day. On Thursday, the judge said we are starting court at 8:30, no matter what. And that didn't happen. Hello, troublemakers, and Stacy, how are you? This is going to cover what happened yesterday in the Flint Farmer trial. So we all were there. We made sure we were there on time. We were standing out waiting for the doors to open. 8:30 came and went. 9 o'clock came and went. 9:15 came and went. And we were still standing out there. People realized that we weren't going to be going in the courtroom right away. So some went back downstairs and some just hung out. I don't think it was like 5 minutes to 10 by time we were able to get into the courtroom. And what we were told is that the attorneys had been arguing all morning about their first witness. And it'll make sense once I start because it's kind of crazy. The one thing that the judge did do is told the jury that they are to disregard any terms regarding the grand jury. You are not able to take this into consideration. Any reference to the grand jury must not be considered evidence and considered in their deliberations. Then the first witness was called. It was Kylie Warner, who is Flint Farmer's daughter. The information that we got right off the bat is that Flint is her father. She was 12 or 13 years old when she met his mother at church. And she knew that he was potentially her biological father, but had to have a DNA test confirm that. And then we were told that she spent lots of time with him. And then I don't remember if it was the prosecutor or the defense attorney said, "Judge, can we approach?" And they went to the bench and talked, and they dismissed the jury within 5 minutes of this witness entering the witness box. It was crazy. The jury left. They were talking about the motion of limine and wanted to make sure that this witness knew that any drug use prior to 2016 she wasn't talking about. She should just talk about any drug use in 2016 and afterwards, and not to bring up any physical abuse that may have happened. Prosecutor said, "Well, we're going to talk about drug use. We've been talking about it throughout this whole case, and we should be able to talk about it now with her." And that's when they agreed that it would only go from 2016 to the present. Another thing that the defense wanted to do was be able to bring up some of her past acts and how she lied to law enforcement, some of the charges she was on. And the judge said, well, if those things haven't happened within the past 10 years, you can't bring that up. And he's like, well, this happened in 2016, so we should be able to bring up any bad past acts from 2016 to present. The judge denied that. And then the defense says, well, let's question her and find out when these acts were, because we're not really sure. So the defense said, in November of 2022, were you deposed by Elfman? And she said, yes. She said, and they asked her, have you lied to police in the past? Yes. What year was that? She doesn't remember the date, but she knows that it was back in 2008 or 2009. And the judge said that because it's beyond the 10 years of today's date, that the defense could not bring that up. So the jury was brought back in, and there was another immediate sidebar with the judge. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. So then finally we get started again, and the prosecution asks her some questions, and these were her responses. Her relationship with her father has been drug-fueled. It's been the rough and the worst hit for her. She was in very bad shape, spent lots of time with her dad. Drugs were at the core of the relationship, and she had daily interactions. And let's see. She said she knew Karena through her dad, did drugs with her, and that there's a phone call from the grand jury at the jail. And when she talked to her dad after Karena went missing, he said nothing. She said shortly after they had filed the missing persons report is when she found out that Karena had disappeared. She said she was ashamed, panicked, and confused. And the last place she knew Karena was at Flint's house, and he didn't say anything to her about it. So when she called Flint, he had said that Karena was not there and did not know what was going on or where she could be. She said the police visited her. Flint texted her asking to call on a landline because he did not want her to contact him through the cell phone because he felt landlines were safer. He was trying to hide or conceal something on the landline, is what she thought. So she called him on the landline, and he told her, don't say anything or speak to anyone. She was here and something happened. She told him that the police had questioned her, and he was very concerned about this. He told her specifics of what happened. At his house with Karena. So before I go on, there's going to be a warning here and a trigger warning here. There's lots of sensitive information that's going to be given today regarding what was said that happened to Karena. And so I just want all of you to know that some of it is graphic and hard to hear. So I'm just giving you a warning now. So Riley was told that Karena had taken something from him and it set him off. She was there and she did come inside. She was messed up. They were messed up. She was there partying. She stole the keys to his safe and took drugs. he attacked her and snapped her neck. So when she took the keys from his pockets for the safe, he always kept his money and drugs in the safe in his apartment. And apparently what he told her is that it sounds to me like he passed out for a little bit. And when he came to, he saw her in the safe with the stuff. And he said he freaked out and snapped her neck. The kitchen is where he kept the safe. She explained that Flint had received money from a disability and that he was spending large sums of money and kept large sums of money in his safe. He had bought in various different rugs, the H1, Xanax, and he was buying things for people. She said he was very particular about his safe because of what was inside. He didn't want anyone touching that safe. And then she testified to the fact that Felicita, otherwise known as Tot, Flint's sister, would keep the safe if he was in jail, and that she is Flint's protector. She said that when he was describing what he had done, the tone of him telling about Karina's death was that he messed up. He just said it and then realized what he said and clammed up. Said he was joking and thought it was funny.
And not to interrupt, but maybe I misunderstood, and I'm not looking at my notes, but I'm pretty sure I wrote down, I thought she said that he realized that he was messed up also.
Yes.
And that's why he said it. So
Yeah.
It was kind of like a slip of the tongue because he was under the influence.
Right. Yeah, they were both according to her, to a few people, they were both under the influence that night. When he told her that he did this to her neck, he didn't indicate a day, time, or any other information. He went and got the neighbor, Alyssa, and apparently these two were very close. Flint Farmer and Alicia is her name. Sorry, Alicia. They were together all the time. They loved each other. And he was there visiting all the time. And that Flint was closer to Alyssa than she was with Brad. And that'll make more sense later on once we go through Brad's testimony. She said there was drug use with all of them. That he contacted Alicia and he was panicked when he got her. Alicia helped look for his rugs. They searched Karena and found him. And Alicia called Brad. They asked her about Flint's position about stealing things from him. She says it's not good. And then there was an objection due to speculation, and it was overruled. So she said the experience of someone stealing from him, he would get livid and he would flip out and he would get angry right away. They asked her about how fit he was in 2016. And she's like, well, he's a big guy, and he's trained in martial arts. So he's always been in pretty good shape. So after this happened, there was several conversations with Kylie, and the stories kept changing. And he kept trying to tell her that what he meant to say is that what he told her about breaking her neck was a rumor, and that he heard. And when he told her, she believed it was a statement of what he actually did. She called, now this is Kylie, his daughter, she called law enforcement and Marlena Smith. And Marlena is the mother of Karena, and told her that she wanted to help and that she was giving statements to law enforcement and that she was high when she did the statement. She has been in long-term recovery for the past 11 years, and that didn't make sense to us because this happened in 2016. And it wasn't until 2022 when she was taping all these calls with Flint Farmer, her father, and everything. So I'm not sure if we heard that right, but I'm pretty sure that's what she said. She gave statements for the next day, and she made a call to Marlena telling her what happened and what Flint told her happened. After statements and calls to Marlena, she was extremely uncomfortable. Things were very uneasy, unsettling, and she maintained a relationship with Flint. Investigators ramped up their investigation in 2021, and she was being contacted by law enforcement all the time. They figured she knew something. And they were re-looking at the investigation and asked her to help. And she agreed. She agreed to make some phone calls and see if she could get him to admit anything and record those calls. They did play 3 of those calls in court yesterday. The first one was from June 28th, 2022. It was very hard to hear these calls because there was a lot of static, a lot of background noise, kids yelling. So I took the best notes I could along with Bossy here. But
I am almost home, so thanks for
okay,
being patient with me tonight, Marv. I appreciate it.
that's all right. So the first phone call they played was June 28th, 2022. They were talking about her child first in the call. And then she told them that law enforcement had been back a few times. And he asked her, what are you telling them? The next time they come back, tell them that you're uncomfortable talking to them, that you want a lawyer present, and you don't know anything. He wanted to know, what kinds of things did they ask you? She said, they asked me how I knew her. And he told her that they're using her against him, and that they would splice your words together to make statements that would frame him. He kept telling her, tell them you're contacting an attorney and you're not going to be saying anything until an attorney is present. Then they have to leave you alone. If they had something, they would have arrested me by now. They don't have anything against me. So these are the kinds of things that he was saying to her.
It was a lot of gaslighting going on, basically.
Right. Then there was talk about cameras surrounding the whole house. That he was getting cigarettes the last time he saw her. And he found her sitting on Washington Street. He was telling her not to go down to the police station because they were going to trick her and record it and continue to twist everything that she said. And the prosecutor had asked, or made the statement, there was 12 different times in this phone call that Flint tells her what to tell police. And then I think there was an objection, because then he asked, did he tell you on multiple occasions what to tell police? And then there was another objection. And the answer was, just tell them you don't have anything to say and to leave you alone. And she said, yes, that was a lot of what he was saying. Brennan. I'm looking to see if there's a date. No, I did not catch the date, so I did not write that down. And they may not have said what date it was, because they were trying to make sure that they could get the call up and workings for us to hear. One of the things that he told her was, tell them to show you the evidence. He said, there is no evidence. and that was objected to for speculation and hearsay. Then they got into the second call, and I'm going to let Bossy, if she's ready, go into that one. If not, I'll skip to the third call and we'll come back to that second call. She knew for a while. I can tell you that. You're welcome. Yeah, Heidi, I don't remember them saying a date either. I think they forgot to say that part. The phone call with his son doesn't come up till later.
I am home and getting set up on my MacBook.
Okay, go for it. I'm just going to go through comments here for a minute while we're waiting. I'm so glad the family is getting their justice. He will get what he deserves. I sure hope so. I'm here. I'm Andrea's daughter. Thanks for helping. You're very welcome. Yeah, if you have a question, if you could put question marks first, put like 2 question marks and then your question, it'll be easier for me to spot when I go back through the chat, and that would help greatly. Thanks so much for help giving Karena the love and respect she needs. Absolutely. They didn't want anything bad to come out about his relationship with his daughter. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I'm going to go on to the third call, and then we'll
Are you wanting me to, is it my part? Am I up?
Yep, you're up.
Okay. I can go ahead and go through it. I'm just getting my notes open right now. If you just give me one moment.
Okay.
I just need a little bit of reminder of where I'm at.
Let me respond to Maria here. Maria says, so many lies he's been caught in. Thanks for what you do, Marv. You're welcome. Maria, you're absolutely right. Since the opening statements, Flint Farmer's team has been caught in a lot of lies. And it's crazy. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so is it the June 28th call? Which one did you just do?
I did the first one, but that didn't have a date.
Okay.
But your June 28th call sounds right. And was that of 2022?
Yes, I believe so. It's probably further down in my notes and my, chicken scratch of writing when you try to write so fast. So,
yep.
Let's see. I'm just trying to see where our notes are the same, Marvin, than where I needed to come in at. So,
well, I didn't take any notes from call 2, so you have all those.
Oh, okay. So, yeah. The June 28th phone call. I'm sorry. I just got home and I'm reading over my notes real quick. So, let's see.
Heidi says the first call was June 28th. The second call was June 29th.
Okay. Well, I'll just start reading here. And if it's something that you've already covered, it's not much. How about that? Okay.
Go ahead.
So, I think this was right here. The defense had objected to evidence of phone calls, and versus her interpretation of them. It's another one of those weird things. Did Flint Farmer indicate law enforcement was forcing her into saying something not wanted? He said, just tell them this. And the argument was, if Flint Farmer instructed the witness not to discuss with law enforcement or go back in to talk to them.
Right.
He indicated if a body or evidence was found like a body, DNA, law enforcement would have made an arrest by now. Am I in the right spot? I know I
Yep.
am.
No,
Okay.
you are. You are.
Okay. Because there is a lot of repetitive stuff too.
Yep.
Flint Farmer, he kept indicating that, like if there had been an arrest, he acknowledged he knew a body hadn't been found. He indicated that they harassed Beth, Vince, and he also indicated that he didn't have a vehicle.
Okay.
He stated that he bought Karena food, chips at VP, and that was the last he saw her. He indicated a man in prison or something about a trunk. Flint Farmer instructed not to go to law enforcement, that they will record her. The detective reached out later to reinvestigate the case. Farmer stated he was trying to protect her, and law enforcement would go and use her words. That's right. That's what you just said.
Use her words against her. Yep.
Yeah. Did not believe that Farmer was trying to be protected. He just did not believe that Farmer was trying to protect her.
Right.
This says June 28th call. Flint Farmer indicated, tell them that you won't speak without a lawyer, and I did just hear you say that. So June, and he indicated that it was harassment, and just tell him to leave you and leave your family alone.
Yep.
June 29th, another call to Farmer States, which is States Exhibit 13 phone call. It was being published with transcripts provided to the jurors so that they could read along.
Yep.
And then there was another sidebar. Did you cover this already? I apologize.
No, this one I don't have this, so this is definitely the one.
Okay, it says speaking on 3 in. Okay. Oh, so she was speaking on her 3-year-old, and so it's just basically casual conversation about her kids right now.
Right.
And she was saying how the 3-year-old stands like Tot does, and talking on a familiar stance that the two of them share. She said they came back. She said they came back and weren't and it wasn't confrontational. And she stated she's not comfortable with them, how they keep coming back.
And she's talking about police, law enforcement at that point. Yep.
Correct. And she was telling them, you're putting me in a bad position with him being my dad. Farmer indicates he is proud of her, and they wouldn't stop bothering her until they got what they wanted and could splice, the video together to make it appear like something that it wasn't.
Right.
He tells her, tell law enforcement, show you the evidence. And this was referring to what Tot had told him. He states, Tot said they told her there was no evidence. He was speaking on Jerry and her son, making a big deal about it, and a farmer trying to get her, that farmer tried to get to her or something, not quite sure there, but that he made a promise. Flint Farmer made a promise to Karena's mom and grandma that he wouldn't sell to Karena. And he stated that Karena would call him pretending to be Jerry or her mom to get, the rugs that she wanted. And he was saying it was H. He stated Karena knew where he lived. He started speaking on this guy named Rowan. I'm not sure if that's his first or last name.
Tommy Rowan, I believe it was.
Okay. His friend of 20 years, who was, I think, his friend. I don't know if he was doing 20 years in Michigan City or he knew him for 20 years. He just kept saying they were harassing Beth and at work and Olivia at work. Um, Somebody's dad was her boss. I can't read my writing. I think it's Todd's dad was, no, not Todd's. I'll decipher it, but somebody's dad was Olivia's boss.
Okay.
Brad's dad was Olivia's boss.
Oh, that's right. Brad's dad.
Vince moved, and then when Farmer was arrested, and went to jail, Vince, his son, moved into, his apartment in Kokomo.
Correct.
He states that he took to Karena to Trinity to get her sober, which is kind of like a Ford County counseling or some kind of center, like to help, people get clean.
Yeah, he said he was the only one trying to help her. He made some very negative comments about the family, made references to gangs in Chicago, how her one sister was a gangbanger,
Yeah.
and that they used Karena for more than drugs.
Yes. He said that he tried to help her. He said he found out someone else was selling to her, and he confronted him and said Karena was a minor. She asked why or how they came to the conclusion she was last seen with him. So she's like, why are they saying that Karena was last seen with you? And he said Karena and Shannon stopped by for money and asked to come in. And he said, no, he didn't want her stealing or drugging him.
Right.
He says he met her at Village Pantry and wouldn't give her any money, and they went their separate ways. Him and he said that someone picked her up on Washington.
Yeah, but he didn't know who.
Right. When she got to the house, he says him and the girlfriend. Well, he doesn't say girlfriend. I couldn't catch the name, but I know he was talking about the couple. He said someone picked him up on Washington. When she got to the house, she was unresponsive. They took her to the ER, and then allegedly she was seen a few days later, according to Farmer in the phone call.
Right.
So he's basically saying, look, I met her at Village Pantry, bought her a few things, and then we went our separate ways. And then, and then she got to this couple's house, and then she was unresponsive. And so they took her to the emergency room. But then a few days later, somebody saw her out on the street again. So
right.
That's basically the gist of what the phone call was there.
Yeah, he was trying to point people away from him.
Mm-hmm. And he states that he would even testify to this.
Yep.
Now's his chance. He states the friends were talking about law enforcement encounters. She said Flint Farmer knows what happened. He is okay. And is this where you started taking notes again, or is this still where? I think this was around. Okay, this was about 11.
Yeah, I bet you this is where the third call comes in.
Okay, so and this is around about 11:42 in the morning. Because I try to keep track of how long certain things are and just what kind of day. He's speaking. Yeah, he's speaking on if the couple knew so much, they must be involved. He says they can't incriminate him, and he offered a lie detector test, but law enforcement wouldn't do it because they knew he was telling the truth.
Croc.
Yeah. And then there was another sidebar, and I just took a note saying that the jury was attentive. A few of them were reading over the transcript of the phone calls during the sidebar. So back to the phone call, he stated that they were going to try and basically frame him. He stated he didn't hurt her and that she was, and I I hate even repeating this, okay? But he said, he said he didn't hurt her and that she was raised by snakes. It
Yes.
says, um, she has, and says she has empathy and there's nothing. This is, so he's talking to his daughter on this phone call and he's saying, I know that you have empathy, but there's nothing you can't, and he stops. And then, it says talked to her dad. I think he talked to Karina's dad, maybe.
So yeah, this is part of the third call. So in the third call, he really it reiterates that they're going to let him hang out to dry. They are truly going to try to frame him, um, and make a case against him. He says, "I didn't do anything to that girl. She had problems. She was raised around problems, raised by snakes.
Yes.
I hope she's alive and well and away from her family." Um, the whole family is a pile of poo, except her dad. That he talked to her dad for a couple of hours. He talked to Jerry when he was in prison, and he keeps denying he don't know what happened to her. He has theories as to what happened, and one of his theories was the trafficking. Remember that?
I do remember that now.
And
And
then he started talking about Kokomo has problems, bad problems. There's bad problems in the US. People go missing in the US all the time. Mentions not solving the Delphi murders.
yep.
Afraid it's going to get my kid. Afraid it's going to get my kids. There's going to be vengeance. No one is threatening me to my face. And then he was talking about, why are they doing this to me after 6 years? Says it doesn't make any sense, and that he's going to have to live with this for the rest of his life. Implicating Tommy, I have, but this part was hard to hear. Dad's car was my driver, I have. Maybe Tommy drove his dad's car and he was his driver.
Possibly, because I didn't write any more down during this part. I think this might have been when I had to leave the courtroom. I can't remember, or if I just stopped taking notes because it was hard to hear a lot on that.
That third call was exceptionally hard to hear.
Really hard.
Jerry says, my son has never spoken to that man, and I have never spoken to him. Yeah. Okay, so then... once again, they were talking about family being connected with Chicago, gang banging. All of them were packing. There's a 400% crime rate increase in the past year in Kokomo. Why are they targeting me with all the other crap going on in the world and the city? Then she did mention that she told him that they were putting her in a tight spot with him. He said that was the right thing to do and that he was proud of her. Okay, here we go. States 14 and 15, June 28th and 29th, 2022. So that's when these calls were from. Last time he's seen Karena and I thought he said Liberty, but maybe that wasn't right. LaBrittany together was 2 days before that. He was very proud of her for not saying anything to the police. I have taught his sister, is Frank Farmer's sister, Olivia Farmer. Is that his daughter?
Yes. Oh, Olivia and Vince are his children by Beth.
Yes. I have in here that her family treated her like dog poo. He said that Karena was scandalizing and stealing crap. And he said drugs can cause people to steal all the time. He went to VP. He said they got me on VP cutting up. I bought her some food. She walked out. I walked out. Then Kylie said that this Dottie person was a friend of Flint Farmer's. That they wanted family to get closure. Hope she's alive somewhere and away from the nonsense. Talked about Karena's dad after the report had been made. I'm really glad we had this. This is his conversation with Karena's dad. I'm really glad we had this talk, and I'm so sorry that you're being put through this. There was an objection. Flint told her to call, that he was trying to piece this together. None of it makes sense. Going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. And then we took a lunch break. It was an hour and 15 minutes. We came back from lunch and we stood out there for another hour because the attorneys were arguing again. Then I have States 18 redacted call. Okay, I know what this is about. States 18 is the redacted call. States 19 is the transcription of the redacted call that they give to just the jury members. All the attorneys have one, the judge has a copy, and the court reporter has a copy. In this call, this is Kylie, his daughter, talking to Marlena, which is Karena's mother. She was saying that she knew that Karena was going to his house, told Marlena that he flipped out and caught her, that Karena robbed him, and it happened a few weeks ago too. Said that Alicia was saying that she doesn't know who Karena is and that that's a lie. Said that her real name is Leona and not Alicia. That he had been living there a week and a half. And that Flint Farmer said that Alicia was Kylie said that Alicia was screaming in the background, Kay hasn't been here. Karena hasn't been here. Karena hasn't been here. Said her husband is getting sick of Alicia and Frank Farmer, or Flint Farmer. Kylie said that Flint did not know how old Karena was until her 18th birthday. He gave her money, but thought she was 16.
But he admitted in another call in that previous call, that he was he went to the other dealer and said, quit selling to Karena, she's a minor. I mean, Those were his words.
Right. Um, she said that she felt bad for recording him. You know, it is her dad. And she felt bad until she realized that he had something to do with it. He left her some voicemails. States Exhibit 16 and 17. These were both from 6/23 of 2022. The first voicemail was, he kept saying, or he said, no crime has been committed. As far as I know, no crime has been committed. Second voicemail was, next time they came back, tell them to get a warrant. Record everything. If they threaten you, your kids, you didn't do anything. They can't do a thing to you. So that was the two voicemails that were left.
Okay, and I didn't hear any of this. I'm pretty sure this is when I wasn't in there.
Yeah. Nothing was said about that, Andrea, in court. This is stuff that you guys heard, but none of that was said in court. She said, or they asked her on July 2022, did you attend court and give evidence? She said yes. Did law enforcement talk to you ahead of time? She said yes. And you gave them evidence? She said yes. States 20 was a phone call from Kylie to Flint Farmer. States 21 was the transcripts. She was in a vehicle at the CVS when it was recorded. They asked her, did you know about a wiretap? She said yes. And in this conversation, it was a general conversation at first. I wrote down, Flint Farmer says, praise the Lord for that, talking about someone being sick. He asked her, what time is your testimony? Because she told him that she was going to be testifying in front of the grand jury. She told him 10:30. And he asked her, are you all right with this? And she said, yeah. And he said, someone said you told the cops I killed her, and I didn't kill her. Then she started talking to him about a previous conversation that they had. She said, there was a previous conversation we had, and you said she tried to rob you. That Alyssa came and strip searched her. And he said that was a rumor. What I was telling you is things that I heard that were rumors. He said she never had access to my keys. I kept my safe at Alicia and Brad's. Nobody could get in there. And then he said when Top got the safe, it was at Alicia and Brad's house. He said all of that was just a rumor. That never happened. She was never there. She didn't know where I lived till that day. And he said, I would not give her anything. I took her to Trinity to get sober and to get help. And then she said, well, what about the neck getting snapped? And he says, all this crazy shit being said Joni said she come by to get Xanax. Karena was there. Joni come back, and Karena was gone, and I gave her money and Xanax. All kinds of rumors going on. She asked him, where did Tommy come from? And he told her, Tommy's a friend who was a musician that he met when he was on Suboxone. He was in Michigan that night that Karena and I have Liberty, because that's what it sounded like, but I don't know if that's right, pulled up in the driveway that night. Him and his dad and someone else stopped by the next day. And then they were talking about Dottie, or he was talking about Dottie. Dottie said Karena went to her house 3 days later. She was told she couldn't stay there. I think you're going to steal from me. Then he said, and then we heard Gabe Ellis said he picked her up after Karena left my house. He says, I'm just trying to tell you that these are all kinds of crazy rumors, and some of them are about me. And he said, and he says, then all my money was in the bank. It wasn't it. He said, I only kept $400 to $500 in the safe. Oh, and I do have a note here that this call was July 14th, 2022. And the safe was kept at Alyssa and Brad's.
So Marv,
Yep.
excuse me, just to clarify, these are phone calls while he was in jail after he was arrested for Karena's murder, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Or no. That one was when he was,
but so he was charged with something else and he was in jail. And so he was already in jail when they charged him with Karena's.
no. They arrested him, Brad, and Alicia on the same day.
Okay. So these calls are
when he was out and about.
okay. Okay.
Let's see. So then they talked about States 22. That was also on 7/14/2022. Kylie called him and was with law enforcement in a Jeep. And she was on Markland. And made him believe that she had already given testimony to the grand jury, but she hadn't, because she didn't testify in front of the grand jury. She told him, I can't talk about anything. He told her if they offered him immunity, he would testify, and that under the Fifth Amendment, they can offer immunity for testimony. And then he said apparently they didn't want the truth because they didn't talk to him about the immunity. And then he asked her, did you talk about what we talked about? She said, yeah, but. And then he said, did you incriminate me? And she said, I answered their questions. And then they were questioning her, and she just said that this was very hard to do, to try to identify her dad and what he may or may not have done. And that was the end of the prosecution's first questioning. Okay. Oh, I get it, Andrea. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to tell you that there was a lot of objections in this part. The defense basically said, your last name is Warner? She said, yes. He asked her, in 2016, what was your rug of choice? She said H, benzos, meth, Xanax, and that she was using on a regular basis. They asked her if it impacted her memory, and she said yes. And they asked her how many years actively using. She said several. And then I have in here, she said she's been sober September 2017. And then they asked her, on October 31st, 2016, when you talked to law enforcement, were you higher than a kite? Yep. And then 11/1/2016, she gave statements. Gave statement something day before.
And is this still his daughter, correct?
Yeah, this is the defense.
Okay.
Oh, and then they asked him, is it true that you did not give testimony to the grand jury? And she said no. They must have asked her what her dad was like, and she said dad was an active user. He sounded intoxicated. Yes. Half brother, half sister. Olivia got married 10/9. Hang on here. 10/9/2016. Then they asked her, did you review the statement? She said yes. Did this refresh your memory? Yes. They kept going back because she kept giving the wrong date, you guys. And this was the most frustrating part. So she's talking about 10/9/2016. And they're talking about this wedding and wedding reception. And he said, you were at a reception that was on 10/9/2016, right? And she says, yeah, it was during that time. And it was a month later that you gave the statement. And again, 10/9 was reception. Yes. Alicia Glenn, a jailer, contacted her the day after the wedding reception and told her about Karena being missing. That's why this 10/9 date they're harping on her about this, because she kept saying it was the day after the reception, and the reception was 10/9. So on 10/10, she was told that Karena went missing, but Karena didn't go missing until 10/11. They asked her if she was intoxicated at the wedding. She said yes. When is the first time Mr. Farmer confessed to you? She said, I can't give you an exact date. She said within that week. So she's saying within the week of 10/9 is when he confessed to her. Said he killed her? Yes. Before your call with Ms. Smith? Yes. 10/9/2016 to 10/31/2016. She was told lots of different stories by Flint, and it was hard to keep it straight. He says, yeah, but in those calls, he never says he did anything. And there was an objection. This is the start of lots of objections. And the reason the lawyer objected, the prosecutor objected, is because that he's stating that when the defense attorney is asking these questions, he's testifying by giving information that hasn't come out yet. So then she was asked, this was 6 years after. She said yes. And it was not, he was not involved and other people involved. And then they said he did, and there was an objection. And he's talking about these calls that he had with her, or that she had with Flint, and she's like, you never corrected him? They're like, you never corrected him and told him that he told you what happened? Objection. And then the question was, did you correct him saying he confessed? She said no. She said in 2016, she was going to record all conversation. Oh, in 2016, you said you told Marlena you were going to record all conversations. She said yes. And then they asked her, were any played today where he confessed? She said no. That he did not confess after that time. And she said yes. Did you report that you knew prior to speaking to Karina's mother? I don't remember. Had several conversations with law enforcement. So then they were talking about October 31st and what she told Detective Webster. The first official statement. Flint said they would never find the body. Is it true that he said this? Yes. Clint confessed to killing her. Yes. Then he said, would it surprise you? And the prosecutor objected. Defense gave her a copy of Defense I, which was another statement. Asked if this looked familiar. She said yes. Told her what page to go to. Asked her if that was her initials. She said yes. He said, did Mr. Farmer tell you he killed her? Yes. He didn't say kill her, but we never find a body. Did you say that? She said yes. Did he tell where the body could be found? She said yes. Burying it at Grandpa's house. And she said no. I said possibly it would be buried at Grandpa's house.
Marv, again, you're doing a great job and we really do appreciate you. Okay, thank you. And I know a lot of these families do too. So I just wanted to take a moment and personally thank you from me, being here in Indiana and close to some of these cases, and following them for all these years. And it's almost surreal that they're finally getting their day in court, which is wonderful. And hopefully there's going to be more for others. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm glad I can do this for them. Let's see. I have October 17, 2016. Was Ms. Wheeler there when Karena was killed? Her answer was she was there after he killed her. She kept saying there's a lot of stories and different things. And he's harping on her again, but he never confessed in any of these calls, though. And she said yes. And he only told you this one time. Yes. Objection. Asked and answered. Again, one time he confessed. Objection. The judge actually told him to move on to the next question. He said, did you tell Mr. Weber that he found her in his safe with his key and that his key was out of his pocket? And is that all she needed? And she answered, I don't know. And he didn't give you any more detail other than the key to get it in the safe. And she said, yeah. He just said he got in rage, strip searched her, attacked her, and killed her. And then Alicia came over after he banged on the wall. He tried to ask her, don't you think it would be important to report to LE that another witness observed killing? And then there was an objection. Then they asked her to look at page 17. Did Mr. Farmer tell you she was already dead when Alicia came over? Objection. Was there anything different than she was dead when she came over? Objection. And this is where the prosecutor stood up and said, the defense is not following the rules of procedures. You do not add personal narrative to your questions. It is unacceptable. Tell him to move on. Then he goes back and he says, okay, one time he gave the confession. Did he tell you that when Alicia came over, Karena was passed? Her answer was yes. He says, wouldn't you mislead law enforcement in this case? And she said no. Then he brought out another statement. Told her to look at page 16. You've said that he found her with the safe open. She nodded off with her hand in the safe. He leapt over the couch. And called in the girl, Alicia, next door. Yes. Was she dead? Page 17. Answer. He called her over. They strip searched her. According to him, she was alive. She said, well, this is a situation where in one story he said she was alive and the next she wasn't. Objection, asked and answered. Did Alicia find any money in drugs? Yes. On October 31st, you told us early, he said he didn't kill her. Her answer was yes. Now you're saying he is? She said yes. Objection, asked and answered. Judge told him to move on. Then he said, you went into KPD. Were you more sober that day? She said, yes. And that day you got a message from Alyssa? Yes. And then he said, when you were talking to Webster on 11/1/16, did he kill her? What was the date? And she said, I don't recall what date it was. Well, he said the 31st or the 1st. Flint confessed to killing Karena, and she said yes. Then he wanted to know, he asked her, would you use words like I imagine or I don't know or probably? And she said yes. Then he pulled out a statement and he made her look at these pages. And here we go. It says in the statement, imagine if it was the cause. He snapped her neck. Yeah, that's what I said. And did you say he probably snapped her neck? Yeah. Did he say he snapped her neck? No, I would tell you, I wish I knew. And that's what he said. The defense attorney is stating that she said this in a previous statement. And then the defense attorney says, you must have been his favorite in order for him to confess to you. Well, that brought on an objection. They asked, were you close to Flint? Yes. Did he trust you? Yes. Were you just a drug buddy? Not until I became a parent. Well, she said yes, but I did not realize that until I became a parent, and it hurt my feelings. And then the defense attorney says, well, aren't you just upset with your father because you didn't get any money from him, from his Social Security claim? And she said, I did get money from him. He paid for Halloween costumes and other things. So I did get money from him. They asked, did you get Xanax for Martha daily? Yes. Was the pressed? Were the Xanax pressed? And were they killing people? She said, yes. Did you tell Webster you would wear wire? She said, yes. And you did? And she said, yes. But nothing was recorded where he said that he killed her. Yes. Did he confess on these recordings? No. But you tried to get him to confess. She said yes. She said she wore it for a couple weeks. Or no. He said, you wore it for a couple weeks. She said no. She said the confession was provided and that was worn in November of 2016. Please ask her to get any info about Karena. She said yes, they did ask me to do that, and that she volunteered to wear the wire. November 2022, the 14th, she gave statement, yes. Were you truthful? She said yes. They're just discussing this wedding reception again. I don't know what was discussed on each date. Is this your statement? Yes. Page 7. Did you admit Alicia G contacted you after reception? Yes. The day after the reception? She said yes. And then he said Karena must have gone missing after the reception. She said, I don't know. She said, they asked her, how did AG contact you? She said, by phone. They said, when Flint told you not to use the cell phone, did you tell this to police? She said, yes. And when he left the message on her phone. Did you give that message to police? She said, I don't know. They're asking about Tommy. Was that the first time you met him? She said yes. After the wedding, where did you go? She said, I went to VP with her dad. Purchased drugs. Yes. Got Xanax from Flint. And there was more objections. This is where the prosecutor stood up, said there is no evidence of an overdose. I want you to either sanction or admonish Mr. Decker, the defense attorney. He keeps saying what evidence will or will not show. He's characterizing his questions, and he wants them sanctioned or admonished. The judge did admonish the defense attorney in front of the jury. So, hopefully, do you think he settled down after that?
Say that again.
Do you think the defense attorney settled down after that happened?
I don't think so. I was out. This is the part that I was out, and I came back and you told me, and I was like, dang it. I mean, not like dang it, because it's not a show, but I really still am a little confused as to what that means and what happened, to be honest, Marv. So
okay, so when you ask a witness a question, there's a way to do it, okay? And you can't put in extra information.
Okay.
That makes it sound like you're testifying.
Okay, right.
While you're asking the question, and that is exactly what he kept doing.
Right, and I do get that, but when you say that he did admonish him, is that the word?
Yeah.
What does that mean? That like they had, like, the jury had to disregard it, or he was just basically like warning him, like, that's enough, you need to stop.
He was warning him.
Okay.
He said the defense attorney, something to the effect of the defense attorney is not phrasing his questions properly, and following the rules of whatever, and just let them know that he was acting up and being obnoxious.
You would think that you wouldn't want to do that in front of a jury. You know what I mean? Don't you think do you think it has an impact on a jury?
It can, because they're already hearing his question.
Okay.
So then they're getting ideas in their head about, well, that wasn't said in any of the testimony so far. And
right.
And in his questions, he was really focusing at saying this was an overdose, and this is why, in his questions, well, this was something about overdose, or whatever, right. and really hammering that in. And by doing that, he's biasing the jury.
Sure, it's planting that little bit of seed of thought. So, and then on another aspect, though, do you think that the defense lawyer behaving that way, being admonished, do you think the jury, that'll have an impact on what they might think of the presentation of their case? Does that make sense? Maybe I didn't phrase it the right way. Just like,
no, you did. I mean, if it were me on the jury and I was listening to this back and forth of him trying to answer question and objection after objection after objection,
right?
I would be like, where did this, and I said this at the Delphi trial too, where did these defense attorneys get their law degrees from?
Right.
They're supposed to be seasoned, experienced attorneys, and they can't even ask their questions right.
Right. And
What's up with that?
and one of my observations is, and we've talked about this, maybe probably on the last live stream also, that after the prosecution does their questioning, and it seems like it's been every witness so far, the defense just gets up there and asks the exact same questions, like
Yes.
almost verbatim. And it seems to, and sometimes they'll ask the same questions multiple times to the same witness, and it's almost like borderline badgering a witness.
Yes, and that's part of what was happening with her, because I bet you there was at least 10 instances where he asked her. So he only confessed to you one time and just reworded it several different ways and kept asking her and the prosecution objected and objected, answered, asked and answered, asked and answered, and it was ridiculous. And then he would ask some different questions and go right back to that question and try to ask it again.
Right. And I think it's basically because they're trying to like catch him up in a lie, but or just catch him up on something
They're
because,
trying to trick him, yes.
yeah, because, and they're trying to trick him on like just minuscule things. And this is like just for example only, like, oh, oh, or just now you said that was at 10:23, but on this date and this date, and then
Mhm.
10 minutes ago you said it was, probably 11:17. And even though
And
they're
and
saying,
that's why they kept bringing up those previous statements
yes,
of these witnesses, trying to get them to say, "Oh, I lied," or something like that. But each one of these witnesses have said that they were messed up. They
right.
don't remember exact times and
And they're
dates.
also, and it's like they're trying to get them to pinpoint
They're
an exact
trying to
time.
trap them into a
Yes.
time and a date. And
Yes.
these people are like, "I was too messed up. I cannot guarantee that is the right time or date."
Well, I am someone who's not even in that state of mind. And, ask me what happened, let's go back to like 6 months ago, even. I'm
Yep.
not going to know exactly what time I was on, I would have to physically, look at a calendar so I would know what day of the week it was on. And maybe that would jog my memory and stuff like that. And we're just talking 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So, and I know that we all can relate to that.
Well, like Maria says, the defense is grabbing at whatever they can. Their case is falling apart.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Maria. I mean, so far it doesn't really even sound like they have a case, to be honest. I haven't heard much of a presentation other than, um, and no disrespect to any family members or loved
Right.
ones. I just seem, it's like they're trying to say, Karena was just this young girl who ran around and liked to do, rugs and thieving and up to no good.
Right.
But and then even hypothetically, if that were even remotely true, that doesn't mean that this man is innocent of the crime he's been accused of.
And it
Because it
doesn't
just
mean that anybody had the right to take her life away from her.
No, nobody has the right to put their hands on anyone for any reason whatsoever, unless it's self-defense. I mean,
Yeah.
that's about the only situation. But it's, you have to remember, especially in murder trials, I mean with other ones too, but especially murder cases, the defense's attorneys are to make you like, hey, look over here. Because we don't want you to see the actual facts of what's going on in this case. Don't question those. Just look over here. Look
Yeah.
over here. So um, I hate the way that our justice system actually has been. It's not so much about defending them, it's about actually trying to get these people out of the crimes that
Yeah.
they've committed. And that's a scary thought. But That's not going to happen in this case. There's no way. I mean, I do not see it happening at all. This is my personal opinion right now, without even, hearing more testimony. Is he's going to be found guilty, in my opinion, as
Right.
of right now, from what I've heard.
So the last part that you missed is one of their favorite things that the defense likes to question on. And that is, um, did you tell law enforcement you believe you took false or fake Xanax?
Okay.
And this is where they get into, well, what were these pressed?
Mm-hmm.
And she said yes, she believes they were. Did they have fentanyl? Yes. Well, doesn't fentanyl kill? Won't it kill you? She says yes. Um, and you use Xanax? Yes. And they were pressed? Yes. And they contain fentanyl? Yes. Um, but you don't know the dosage of it? And she said no. And then another question they love asking is, well, do you have friends who overdosed? Yes. Um, and then they went back at her about that the next day after the wedding, um, and how she got a call from Alicia, and she said yes, you know, and they asked a question and there was an objection. Okay, and then he said, did he confess within days of that wedding? And she said yes. And he went back and asked, prior to the call with Marlena Smith. She said yes. Now those questions that I just said, except for the pressing and the fentanyl and everything. He threw those in at the end, but he asked those several times already. But he still threw them in at the end. Again. So, and then he stopped. I think he knew that he was pushing buttons, and he stopped after that. And then it was the prosecution's turn to recross. They said, do you wish you knew regarding what he did? And she said yes. And they said there were many contradictory stories that he told you. And she said, absolutely. Everything that I'm testifying to is what Flint Farmer told me. June 28th and 29th of 2022, the phone calls to Flint Farmer. Did you correct Flint Farmer about him saying killing her? Do you remember that? She said no. And they said, did you correct him in those conversations, correcting that info? And he said yes, or she said yes. And I think they're trying to say, because she said, they asked about the neck snapping, and she said yes. In the recordings, he did state she'll never find her body. And in 2022, did you approach Flint Farmer about killing her? Yes. Testified about how many characterizations there were, and how many different rumors there were. And she said yes. They asked her about the call after the wedding reception. when did you call from AG come in reference to the reception? The day after. Were you taking and having issues with Xanax at the time? Yes. She said it could have been 2 days later. Or they said, could it have been 2 days later? And she said, yes. I can't be certain on what date it was. Page 7, line 5 through 12. They read, next day of reception, got call from AG stating Kay's mom was freaking out because she was missing. Is that what you said? And she said yes. And then they just left it at that. And then I believe we took a break because I think we got a 15-minute break. And then you and Mark in the chat were able to come in the courtroom again and listen to the next two witnesses. Is that right?
Yes. If that's the point that we're at, then yes. And this is where it really gets intense, everyone.
It does. Can you just talk to the audience here for a minute about, what reactions you're seeing from the jury between yesterday and today? I got to go run and grab a soda.
No problem.
Okay.
So like I said before, I noticed that like when they had like any type of transcripts in their hands like that, and there was a sidebar that they were reading along, and they've been very attentive. Sometimes that's why I'm not taking notes. I'm just kind of looking around and kind of doing some observations of the courtroom. There's one juror, and no disrespect, I give everybody kind of little nicknames, so I can kind of it's just my way to connect. There's a older gentleman, and he reminds me of Captain Kangaroo, and he is very, very attentive. At one point, I believe, and I'm not quite sure. Actually, I do remember they had handed out. I believe it was some charges. It was just the defense had handed out some exhibits for them to look over, and the gentleman that I'm referring to was reading like all through it, and I guess they were just supposed to, not really supposed to, but they were reading over it, and you could have just skimmed over it. It was just an exhibit to give them a general idea of what the defense team was talking about. And he asked if anyone was the defense lawyer asked if anyone was still reading, and the gentleman said yes, and the lawyer said well, and this is when he stated you don't really have to read through it all, and this juror said, well, if you hand me something to read, then I'm going to read all through it, because you handed it to me to read, and I want to know what it says. So it kind of got just a slight chuckle from everyone in there. And if I recall correctly, Marv, didn't we wait for him to finish reading that exhibit, the juror? Do you remember that part?
Yes.
So, and like I said, all of them, and I don't know if you said this earlier, because I cut out for a little while, but the judge did say, when he kind of went over the decorum again and warned everyone in the beginning, that jurors are even noticing your behavior and your sound effects and things like that. So he said that that there were some concerns that there were jurors sleeping, and he said, I rest assure you they are not. I'm paying close attention. They
Right.
just don't have anything to write on. So a lot of them are having to use their knee or, their other hand, and they're looking down and writing in their notebooks. So, and I would have to agree with them. I did think that at first.
I did too.
And I was watching a gentleman, and I was like, I kind of think I whispered to you, like, during a sidebar, like, I think he's asleep. And then all of a sudden, like, he looked right up. You know what I mean? I was like, no,
Yeah.
we're like,
It
no,
made
please.
sense after he said that.
Yes, absolutely. So, it's just, and you're really close because it's a really small courtroom.
Yep.
So, but I have noticed that all the jurors seem very, very attentive, and it's a pretty wide range,
It is.
of jurors and genders. So that makes me feel good and confident that he is getting a fair trial by a jury of his peers. I think um, for the best of its ability right now. So I mean, from what it was, I wasn't at jury selection. No, none of us were. It was a closed jury, and I know that sometimes they have a hard time in smaller cities. Not really smaller cities, not like Kokomo is a small city, but being able to pull a jury from that area that might not know too much about the case or be able to even attend it. So
Right.
I feel pretty confident in whatever they decide, which I've already spoke what I think how the case is going to go. But I'm pretty confident that they're gonna make the right decision in this case.
I sure hope so. Well, the next two witnesses were, I think, the toughest to listen to. And the first person that got on the witness stand was Alicia Wheeler, followed by her husband, Brad. And there was a lot of emotion in these two testimonies. Alicia said that she's been married to Brad for 25 years, that in 2016 she lived on South Washington Street, apartment 1. She was a neighbor of Flint Farmer's. She only knew him for about a year before he moved into that apartment. They were all using then. They were social, but their relationship was social, but it was also a rug relationship. They saw each other 3 to 4 times a week, and they would do the rugs and socialize. She said she's sober now for 6 or 8 months. She did have a relapse. She's not using now, and she was not under the influence. They asked her about the layout of the apartment doors. She said there's only one back door. She said, but in the front, there's 2 doors.
And if I could just interject something right here. This I'm sorry, her name is Alicia.
Yeah,
And
but they kept pronouncing it Alicia.
oh, it's okay. That's not her. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's Alicia. Is it? Regardless, I apologize if I'm the one mispronouncing it. But this woman, I just want to preface this with the tone of her voice was relief, but also I think I picked up a little bit of, I hate to say fear or nervousness, but that's what was there, because this is something that she's saying in front of Karina's family. A lot of her family and friends are there. So I do think she's very genuine, but I just want you to keep in mind that I felt like that is the tone of her voice and behavior and demeanor that I took away from her was like she's been waiting a long time to testify to this. and
Yeah.
be able to get this off her chest.
Yep. She said in the front, and I agree with you. In the front is 2 doors. Okay. One is here, one is here. The only reason I know that is because I went and took video of the house today. Lori, yes, we can see you. And they're right next to each other. On October 11th, 2016, she said that they asked her if they had a family gathering. She said yes. They all hang out together for the day, and they arrived. Now listen to the way this is described. They arrived during the daytime, not sure about the actual time. Rugs were used by Alicia, Brad, and Flint. Jeff and Alice used pot. She was drinking, using weed, did the Xanax, the H, but she did not black out. She went to bed about 1:30 or 2 or later. She said she never checks on the time unless she has to go to, Jeff and April, yeah. She never checks on the time unless she has an appointment. She can't tell you if Flint Farmer left. She said that Karena arrived. She doesn't know when. She knows that it was dark or just getting dark. She did not see Karena do drugs. She seemed fine. She wasn't there for long, though. She said Karena was only there for a half hour. And that she left with Flint, and they left together. They asked her, "Did you ever see her alive again?" And she said no. She said that Karena appeared fine and that she was staying with her Uncle Flint. She said 2 a.m. or later they went to bed. She woke up and laid back down. Okay, so she woke up between 7 and 8 because that's when Brad leaves. And after he leaves, she lays back down. She woke up again to a knock on the door, and it was by Flint. He said, "I'll be right back." And then he came back with Karena over his shoulders and laid her down in their living room, and she was not alive. He said, "Bitch got in my shit. She overdosed." She said, "We need to call the cops." And he told her no, they couldn't because they would think he did something or overdosed her. She said that he always spoke well of her as his niece. And she told him that she needed to call her husband. And he agreed that she could call her husband. She told her husband that Flint was there at the house, at the apartment, and he brought Karena, and that she was dead. She reiterated that she was told that she got into his shit, and she assumed that when he said that it was drugs. No knowledge of Flint's money, so she didn't know how much money he had. She knew that she had a box of his that they were storing, and just thought it was a box of trophies. That she didn't know it was a safe. And that Tot came and got the safe. Once again, she elaborated that he laid Karena on the floor. He started putting her in two big concrete bags and started taping them together where they intersected. She helped tape these bags together. She said that they threw a blanket or carpet around her. It was red and white. That she helped put the bag on the bottom half of her. She said that Flint had gloves on, that there was blue and white tape around the bags. She said it just happened and she was in shock. She had never seen that look in his eyes before, and that she was fearful of him. Contractor bags. What did I say? She said that her husband, Brad, buried Karena. Didn't look like anything was wrong with her. She had a white stuff on her face. But that before he buried her, he put her in the shed. And this shed was outside of the back door. But what happened is she explained that after she called her husband, they asked her, how long did it take Brad to get home? And she said it seemed like forever for him to get home. Brad told her to call the police. And she told him that she can't, that she thought the body was in the shed. She said that's not something that goes away. That she dreams that girl is still in, that she has dreamed that girl is still in the shed for years. That she has dreamed that girl is still in the shed for years. Oh, Bossy's having some problems, so let's see here. She said that Brad did have a normal routine, that he would put his tools in his truck and go to work. The reason she didn't call 911 was she was afraid to call and wasn't sure what was going through Flint's mind, and that the look in his eyes, he was a big man, and she had never seen him like that before, and she was afraid of him.
Yeah, she was pretty adamant about, like, he's always a nice guy, but this day the look in his eye, she just kept saying the look in his eye, it scared me. She said, I was scared.
She said that she was told that Karena's body was taken north. She said that they asked her if Karena's body was taken north. She said, well, we went that way a few times. And they said, well, didn't you witness him burying her? And she said they spoke about it, and he told her where Karena was eventually. In 2016, they were interviewed. They did not tell police this. They said they had no idea and continued until July 14th of 2022 to testify under oath and deny that they knew anything. July 18th, she was arrested.
That's when
July 18th, the Flint Farmer was arrested, and they also took Alicia to jail, not on a probation. She was not on probation at the time. It was a warrant for a pretrial release.
I thought they said she had a probation violation.
No, it was a pre-warrant or pretrial release warrant. She didn't go to some kind of hearing for a pretrial.
Right, for a pretrial release. Okay.
Right. She thought that she was going to have charges after this, after they went through Flint's house. She testified there was an agreement between the prosecutor and her husband in exchange for her release that he would tell them what happened and where she was.
And I also have that she stated that they brought cadaver dogs back in when all of it started with Karena's case being reinvestigated.
She what?
That's also when they brought the cadaver dogs. It states after that they brought cadaver dogs when it all started back with Karena's reinvestigation.
Oh, okay.
Because I'm pretty sure that they took cadaver dogs. And someone in the chat can always correct me because I do not have the best note-taking skills. But I'm pretty sure, and memory, I'm pretty sure they did take cadaver dogs back over to that apartment where they were staying in.
Okay.
And I think that's what she was referring to when they started reinvestigating the case again, and all of this is going on during this time frame.
Yeah. So, she was released that day due to her agreement between her husband and the prosecutor. Any other promises for immunity and charges dropped for possession. So what she kept saying is that her husband negotiated with the prosecutor to give her immunity and make sure that she had no charges for anything that had to do with Karena. Or the prosecution promised herself, that she would have immunity, and that she would not be charged with any charges due to Karena's case. However, she also said that the prosecutor promised her husband that the previous possession charge would go away in exchange for her testimony. She says, I want this done. I want it over with. I have no relationship with my kids and grandkids. I'm tired of the secrets and lies. I can't deal with it anymore. Once again, they talked about the fact that there was going to be no charges for October 11th, 2016. And she said, no, there's no charges for that. And you got immunity for that. And she said, yes. She was talking about what she heard that night. She said she heard a big thud that night. Then she talked about the Xanax being like 3 pieces and it was very thick and you could not just crush it like regular Xanax. You had to break it with a hammer or a rock. And that's what, when she heard this big thud, that's what she thought was happening. She had no concern at all for Karena or Flint. She figured either they were breaking up the Xanax or that Flint fell off the couch. She said that she did help her up the body. She said, and then they asked her, by not calling 911, did your use impair your ability to remember things? And she said, yes. She says, I've gained a lot of detail over the first few months of getting sober. So there's things that she chose to forget or black out, things that she didn't want to remember that she's remembering. They asked her prior to her unwrapping, did he wipe anything off of her face? She said no. They said in a previous statement, you had made the statement, I wonder if I had heard it happen. I don't know what I heard. And she said yes. And they said, was the tape used just to seal the 2 bags together? And she said yes. Then it was the defense's turn.
So Bossy don't know how to work her phone tonight, apparently. So I just wanted to touch on this part just for a second, if you don't mind, because she was saying, that part where she wondered if she had heard it happen, because like she's just saying now that she's thinking back to knowing what she knows now, is she's wondering if those noises and stuff that she heard was the events that happened over in his apartment. I don't know if we're getting ready. We're getting ready to go into the cross examination. So,
Yeah,
she was very emotional,
she was.
which, she should be. And I'm not saying that in a mean way towards her. I do believe she feels remorse, but she did have a hand in the family's hurt and everything that they've had to go through for the past 9 years now.
Right.
So there's we can have empathy, and I always say, I can forgive people, but that doesn't mean that I can forget what happened. So there's just such a gray area. So you feel sorry for her a little bit, but then you think about what she did, and she's taking accountability now at least. So I give her
But at the same time, the only reason she's taking accountability is because she went to jail and her husband made a deal for her.
right. So it makes you wonder,
If that hadn't happened, they would have never said anything.
yeah, would they have ever said anything? And I'll wait, we can touch on this again in a little bit if you want to, after the cross exam and everything, because I got
Yeah.
one particular thing in mind that she said that stuck with me, and I thought, good. So we'll
Let's go
I'll
through
touch on that.
the defense's question and then we'll talk about that. Andrea, as far as you said, what I don't understand is if they put her in the shed, how'd they find her blood in the garage? Nobody found blood in that garage. That garage was locked by the landlord and nobody had access to that garage. because they kept stuff for their business in that garage.
And
So
see,
they,
I do remember that being said, but
but it's
here
not
we are.
true.
Was
It's
it
another
rumor? It
rumor,
was right. I remember
or
like
I
just
would say
personally,
misinformation.
right. I was thinking, I mean, I remember after they had taken the dogs over there and during the arrest, and we hear things on the news, we hear things word of mouth, we hear things on YouTube, in chat. So I do know what Andrea's talking about because I remember hearing the same thing as they found her blood in the garage.
And I
But
agree that I heard there was 3 different spots in the garage, but it wasn't the garage. It had to have been the shed.
right. So and I think I read in chat, and I'm not sure who said it, but they, maybe she meant, but Jerry said that no one had access to that garage. So it must have just been they found it in the shed, and as word traveled, like the old telephone game,
Yep.
it turned into the garage. So, so that until we hear otherwise, which I don't believe that we're going to, based on information we now know. I'm guessing that perhaps they found it in the shed. I'm sure the detectives that were on scene are going to be testifying it at some point, and that's when we'll find out some more of those details.
I agree. Kathy, I don't think he wanted her in his apartment anymore. He panicked and he put her in their living room. And unfortunately, as you will hear in this next part, that is where she laid for the rest of the day until Brad Wheeler got home.
Well, and
Jerry says no one had entrance ability to the garage. Andrea just shed.
and later down just a little bit further, Jerry does say in pretrial it was stated blood in the garage. He
Okay.
said no one was there but me that day. The entire room was empty, and I heard them state he just.
Yep. And Chad said if you knew her like I do, you would know she has no remorse.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Chad. And like I said, it is hard to gauge someone when they're in this type of position. I don't know anything about it personally. I'm only hearing witness testimony. And like I said, I'll touch a little bit on this a little bit after the cross exam of, like I said, there's something that she said that stuck with me. So we'll get into that shortly.
Okay, Kathy, to answer your question, she is not on the defense's list of witnesses. Whether she's on the prosecution, I would say no, she is not on either because she's been in court watching the proceeding. And if she was a witness, they wouldn't have let her sit in court.
And I find that.
Oh, Andrea, no, she is not.
I would think
Actually,
that she would.
hang on, Bossy. Was she on the defense one?
I wouldn't know that answer, but I would think that she would have. Just I have very limited knowledge of these type of court proceedings. I've been in some, but just based off of what
We
they
have a list
said in
of
phone calls.
we have a list of the witnesses for the defense. We do not have a list for the prosecution.
Jerry said yes, she is to testify.
There's no way because she has been in the courtroom and they did not say anything that she had she was part of any exclusion or anything to be allowed to be in there.
Mark is saying Plot is testifying on Monday. Andre said it. Maybe she was not in the courtroom. Maybe she was just sitting outside the courtroom. I don't know. I wasn't there the first day.
No,
'Cause
she has been in the courtroom.
I thought that first day maybe she was sitting right behind me. I've never seen in courtroom, only outside is what Jerry stated.
Oh, okay, maybe that's right.
So she was probably out just outside the courtroom, but
Okay,
not
and
in. So we will be hearing some
Kathy
testimony from
even said
Pat.
just outside. Okay, so she's been sitting outside, she's fine.
And we do appreciate everyone's patience with us on this, on, getting these details because it's a lot and things blur together when you're there and stuff like that.
Okay, so let's go with the information that the defense gets out of Alicia. Um, Active user, yes, and I was long before I met Flint. Flint was an active drug user, didn't know Karena. First time was summertime, and she did not remember what she was wearing. She could not tell the defense team anything that Karena was wearing. Are there days that you want to forget? Yes. But you're coming clean now. She said yes. You had lots of chances to tell the police. She said yes. Um, then she mentioned something about Teresa Galloway stating that she couldn't wait until it was her dead daughter they were looking for. She was very defiant when she said this. And apparently Teresa Galloway was a police officer and made this comment to her.
And I'm pretty sure this is the part where I saw the juror I call Captain Kangaroo like actually put his hand up to his mouth like to cover a gasp. So
Yeah,
it was jolting the way that it was said in court.
it was. It was. Um, she didn't tell the truth because she didn't want her husband to go to jail for disposing a body. And she told the defense there was not a lot of people coming in and out. And that they used everything up. There was because he kept talking about the defense attorney kept questioning her about the drugs that were still in the house. And she said, there were no drugs in my house. We used them up. And then he asked her, does crushing the Xanax give you a quicker high? And she says, yes. He starts talking about the pressed Xanax containing fentanyl. She said, I don't know. She said, we just got them. Because he said, isn't it your husband's responsibility to get your drugs for you? And she said, no, we just get them. Once again, she said, yes, we hang out with family. They had moved, and since moving, and they didn't get to see Jeff and Alice a lot, so they since they moved back, they did the weekly get-togethers with them.
Yeah, I believe they said that they lived out of state for
Yeah, I think Florida or something like that.
for like 8 years at least or so, and then when they moved back somewhere, at some point they decided to start getting together once a week to have a movie night and
Right.
I guess do some family time.
She said that they would do weed with the
And this
family
was
in the living room, but when they wanted to do the harder drugs, they went to the kitchen to do them. And the hard drugs were done by herself, Brad, and Flint Farmer, and that they were snorting them.
So
She
get
does.
those. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but because I know it could, it took me a while to make it. So she's basically, her husband is the brother of the man we heard testify prior to this.
Jeff Moore, yes.
So that way everybody just kind of knows the connections of the family members and
Well, if they
their
heard the,
relationship.
the last videos, they'll realize that because I
Right,
said
right,
it several times.
right.
Yep. Let's see here. Don't know when Karena came. It was dark. Doesn't remember them coming back a second time. Remembers Flint and Karena leaving. Doesn't recall if they ate pizza. She said when it came to watching a movie, she believed that they watched a movie. That they shared the common wall. That Flint Farmer fell off the couch a few times. Um, they asked her if he did the Zanny walk, which is you're walking, you pretty much pass out for however long, and then you pop back up. She says, I don't know. Fall off the edge of the couch. So she said the edge of her couch was slippery. So when he would sit on her couch, he would like slide down and fall off the couch. Only when he was sitting, not while he was standing. And that could have been the noise that she heard was him falling and hitting his head or crushing Xanax. She has no idea what time they went to bed. It was late, and that she doesn't remember. And then the defense says late, before or after midnight. She said it could have been 10 or it could have been midnight.
And Jerry's is also saying, and which I do remember, she said she asked if she's seen Karena do rugs, and she said no. And she
Yeah, I
asked
already said that part.
oh, okay. And she said
Yep.
that she was happy and smiling.
Yeah, I had already read that part.
Yeah, I apologize. It's so much. I don't mean it's a lot of info to take in.
Yep. Um, she thinks that Jeff and Alice was still there when she went to bed. When she woke up, husband was at work. He would get up between 7 and 8. She would wake up with him, and then she would lay back down after he left. They asked about the time that Flint came over. She said, I don't know. They asked, did you go to Flint Farmer's appointment? And Karena was alive. She said no. She said, I don't know where they were or what time they left. They asked her what time in the morning he came over. And she said it was in the morning time after 8 a.m. because her husband had already left for work. Then they talked to her about being given immunity, that she's not under any criminal charges as long as she testifies and tells the truth. Then they talked to her about a September 2021 charges that are still pending for drugs and public intoxication, and that it keeps getting continued. And they asked her if they're going to be dismissed, and she said she didn't know. She only got immunity for Karena. Her husband says that these charges would be dismissed. So the matters are still pending, yes. In fact, she goes to trial for them next week. I have a note on here. This is when she's on the stand crying. they once again, she said that Flint Farmer knocked on her door. And she walked over to where she could see in his apartment, and she saw someone that she thought was sleeping on the floor. She didn't know if it was Karena or not. They asked her if they saw any signs of a struggle, and she said no. Very soon after this, she said he came back with Karena's body. She did not see any injuries or bruises or scratches, no red marks, not around her neck. And the defense team once again referred to this as white foam. And I believe she referred to it as dry slop. Not sure. Does that mean dry drool? I'm not sure. But she said dry slop. No scratches or redness on Flint Farmer. Assumed she overdosed. No violent death. And in 2016, she was not on probation. She said Flint appeared anxious. That Karena would refer to him as Uncle Flint. That she did call him that, and she seemed fine, not upset, and was smiling. She doesn't recall if she was present when she was buried. And she said no. He didn't tell me until later. The prosecutor then said, what was Flint's physical condition? She said he was feeling pretty good, not banged up, moving around, all right, didn't need any assistance. Asked if anybody had threatened her. No. Intimidated her. No. Why didn't you call 911? Flint said, we are not calling anyone, that he was scared and Ellie would think he did something. They asked her again, what did he tell you when he came over? He said, bitch got into my shit. Assured overdose due to what Flint Farmer said. They asked her about the box. And she said she thought it was karate trophies. Back in his younger years, he talked about, she knew that he did martial arts and that in his younger years, he taught martial arts. And that's what she thought was in the box. And then,
I apologize. One thing I picked up too is like when they were talking about that, the reason he didn't want to call 911 is he said that he was afraid of being blamed for her OD. So, it's a lot.
Well, he was afraid they would pin it on him.
Right. Which, it just that doesn't make sense.
No.
I mean, it does. I mean, it'd probably be a lot less charges for something like that. It's a web of deceit.
All right, let's see here. I trust a rusty nail in my foot before I believe she was sober. Ooh, that's not good. Yes, Galloway is very cruel, Jerry. Kathy says, I will miss some on Monday. Hope to see her testimony. I'll be in there. Yes, she did say that. She's not been in court. Okay. Personally, I don't believe that she doesn't remember going with you or going with him to bury Karena. I will address that after I get done with Brad Wheeler because I will tell you what we did today. She was in the hall. Okay. Okay. So then Brad Wheeler gets up on the stand and says that he's sorry to the family. That he's Alicia's husband for 25 years. He knows Frank Farmer, yes, through his wife. His wife was giving Flint Farmer rides, and he thought they were messing around, that she was having an affair. So he called Flint and confronted him, and they got to know each other and became friends. We were buddies, drank, had coffee, did rugs, talked, became neighbors. He says, what was your, he was asked, what was your apartment? And Brad says number 2. And he said, well, what apartment number was Flint's? And he said number 1. Then he asked him about 10, 11, and 10, 12. Said that Karena and Flint showed up at the house. They came in and left. They went to VP. He knows that they watched a movie with Jeff and April. Karena came in, doesn't know what time it was, sometime between 3 and 6 p.m. Was there later in the evening, not sure on the time, maybe 10. He says he doesn't know for sure. Said Karena was missing the next day, and that he disposed of her body. Said he gave multiple interviews where he lied to protect his wife and friend. Gave false statements till July 18th, 2022. The prosecutor goes, and that's the day that we spoke? And he said, yes. And he's like, that's the day that I gave you immunity? He said, yes. And he said, what promises were made? And he said, immunity for charges to this and wife's charges for this. And she went to jail, and the prosecutor promised to release her, and she must provide truthful testimony. And he said, and what did I always tell you as the prosecutor? And Brad said, you always told me to tell the truth. And he said, and what else he said, and did I tell you that from the 2021 arrest for your wife, it would be dismissed? And he said, yes, once we get through trial, she complies. And the prosecutor says, and stays out of trouble? And he said, yeah, stays out of trouble. He says, are there any other arrangements? And he said, no. And he said, would giving false statements void your immunity? And he said, yes. And he said, all in his apartment, state 24 A through G. These are pictures of the driveway, the porch, the garage, outside of the apartment, the shed, the back door, the apartment with the open door. Do all these pictures actually accurately show, or does picture G actually accurately show the back door? Yep. Said that Alicia testified about the shed. the shed was not in the photo. So the prosecutor asked him to point out the best picture that would reflect where the shed is. And he said picture G is the best. The shed was on the left over by another garage door was the shed. 6 foot high, hard plastic shed. There was gas cans and weed eaters in there. He had to take them out of the shed when he put Karena in. Said he moved her from the living room to the shed. They asked him what happened when his wife called, and he said she called him with and told him about Flint, that Flint came over with Karena and asked him what to do. He said to call 911. She said she couldn't. That she felt Flint was going, or she said she couldn't because Flint wouldn't let her call. He didn't leave work. He continued working. He came home a little early, he says, not much. He said he didn't talk to Alicia and Flint until he got home. And he asked him, why can't we call 911? And Flint said, they're going to hang me for this murder. And then he told him, and because you're helping, you're not going to get to buy your house. He said, Brad said at that time he should have called 911 as soon as his wife called him that morning. He said he went into protective mode. He took care of his wife. He was protecting his wife and then his friend. In the end, he thought he was protecting both and he would get something out of it because Flint told him, I got you. And he thought Flint was going to give him money.
Flint had just gotten some type of settlement or something.
Huh?
Flint had just gotten some type of settlement money for
A disability claim.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he got money from that.
Mm-hmm.
Said they were using Xanax joints H. Not sure. Not impaired to affect testimony. Huh?
They kept asking, and you're not. Were you? I think they were asking if he was impaired to give that testimony. Because remember how they kept asking him that?
Yeah. Not impaired to affect testimony. Okay. He says Flint and Karena were talking at his house. Karena was scared, and that's why she was there, wanted to spend the night, not afraid of him, but something else. They left together. They went to Flint's apartment, saw them go in, and that they did not leave or see anyone else at the door. Heard banging, assumed they were crushing pills, did not concern himself, not in that mode, not worried about him being there, about her being there with him. They watched the movie, don't remember which one. He does remember arguing with his brother to watch Star Wars. He said that Karena was not talkative. First time meeting her, not at his apartment before. So she had not been to his apartment before, or Flint Farmers. He did say though that he had seen her on the north side buying Xanax. And that he said that Flint did not return to his apartment, and that he was the first to bed. They asked him if he had been in Flint's apartment. That he said yes. Is it similar to their apartment? No, because it's an efficiency. Asked him about storing the safe. He says he wasn't sure. He thought it was something, and he didn't know it was a safe. He said, I don't know what, I thought it was a box, and I don't know what happened to the box. They asked him if he observed Karena's body before it was wrapped. He said yes. It was fully clothed, little white stuff around her lips. She looked peaceful, no signs of trauma on her or Flint. He said he helped wrap her body, made sure the contractor bags that were black, 55-gallon, were on. They used duct tape on the middle where the bags overlay. She was wrapped in the carpet from the living room floor, the area rug. Took her to the shed, moved the stuff out, and put her in there and locked the door. Then he moved her to Miami County. Said he left earlier than 7 a.m. the next morning. He went to Menards with her body in the back of his truck to buy a shovel. But he had plywood over the back, and Karena was under the plywood, so you could not see her. But he said the plywood was not touching her either. Drove by the state police, and he regrets not going in. Says he regrets that every day. He had a job where her remains were found, and he had a daughter that lived there. It's a quiet place, and he said, and that's where she went. States 25 showed a map in an area where Karena was buried. The prosecutor took the map, asked him to point out where did you bury her? Show where you buried her to the jury. Explained that it was a trailer park. In this row, there was 4 or 5 trailers, and that some were abandoned, and he backed up to the woods and buried her. Kings Court Mobile Home Park, that he didn't know the owner of the property, but it was a good, quiet spot. Said he started digging about 9 or 10 a.m., but before that, he stopped at Menards for a shovel. And let's see. Said that his wife was with him. She got out of the truck and she sat on the porch of one of the abandoned trailers. But she didn't know where they were. And said that she was not using that day. He was the only one that dug the hole. It was 4 feet deep and as long as Karena was. And he covered her up. They asked about a reference point. He thought he had put something on there. What did he say?
I thought he had said he had a tree or something as a reference
A
point.
twig or
Yes,
yeah, or something
that's
on
right.
there.
But he's about 10 to 15 feet off from where he actually had
Right.
buried
Because
her.
he said the police went out there first, looked, couldn't find her. They came back and got him, and that he was 10 to 15 feet off when they found her. He said afterwards he called Flint and said it was done, and then smashed the phone that Flint had gave him. He had Flint's phone and was using it and smashed it.
He said so that he did that to make Flint believe that he buried that phone with Karena.
They asked him about the conversations with Flint afterwards, and Flint wanted to know, well, does she stick out? Will they be able to find her? But did not say how she died. Just that she OD'd. Kept saying they're going to charge me. They hate me in this town. And they didn't want to know. They asked him about his behavior. He said he was amped up, pushy. I wrote the word intimidating, but he didn't use the word intimidating. He was trying to explain it.
He was saying, as in, like, their conversation, like, he described it as in kind of like a Goodfellas movie, like, you know what happens at the end of the movie, bub, in scenarios like this, is kind of how he went. And he's like, like everyone dies at the end of this movie, or everyone gets arrested at the end of this movie. So, he just kind of used that as an example of how, Flint was being that day. And and he said, yeah, I wrote the same things. He was being pushy, but not threatening, but was making rough, like was implying.
Yeah. I think the funniest part is they asked him if he got paid, and he said $20. I got cigarettes and drugs.
Yep. So he never really paid him. So,
said he lied up until July of 2022. He'd do anything for his wife. Only reason he came forward was to protect his wife. Said that it has ruined his life between guilt and rumors.
yeah, he said something like Michael's accusations. I think he said Michael.
Yeah.
He said they've been homeless.
Bad run all the way around.
Yeah. Basically, karma.
Yep. And since 2016, he's interacted some with Flint.
And that Flint had asked him at least 2 to 3 times, we're good, right? They're never going to find her, right?
Yep.
But those were basically that Flint kept implying about it or inquiring.
Right.
Um,
Asked if he was afraid of Flint, and he says he's not scared, but he is a master karate guy. He's a bad dude, and I don't know if I can beat him.
and that's when he said, he said, I wouldn't fight him. I would just shoot him. That's what
Yeah.
he said.
He had no knowledge of the contents of the safe. Doesn't remember getting anything to store in the first place. The prosecutor definitely asked him, did Flint, prior to the grand jury testimony, try to influence your testimony? He said kinda, offered money, gave him a ride, and didn't say too much. After the grand jury, he talked about what they asked.
Yeah, basically they didn't talk too much prior to the grand jury because they weren't
Right.
sure what the grand jury proceedings would involve.
Right.
But they talked afterwards, and I wrote down no response. Like after they talked, that Flint had no response to that.
No, but this is Brad telling Flint,
Right.
After the grand jury, that what all questions they asked him during the grand jury, and that he had only told lies to the grand jury. He didn't give them the right information.
Right.
October 11th, 2016, April was concerned, yes. She kept nudging Jeff. And he said he went and checked because she was driving him crazy. Did you check? And he said, yes. And he said he peeked out the door, looked in Flint's door, and saw two shadows, two silhouettes inside what he thought was sitting, and no movement.
Yeah, he said he looked in, like the silhouette part is like he said there was like mini blinds and the lights were on inside. So it's like he didn't actually see them. He just kind of saw their silhouettes of two people sitting on what he thought sitting on the couch.
Yeah. Goes to Menards to buy a shovel with Karina's body in his truck bed. Yeah. I know, Mark, that was all hard to hear. Let's see here. Mark says, the only thing I say about the Wheelers is I believe their remorse. I don't like complete freedom, immunity for testimony. Prison time should still be. I agree with you there. I agree with you there. All right, now we're on to the defense. Of course, they start out with, well, what time did you see these silhouettes? And he said it was dark. Pretty sure they were watching the movie, but he did it due to April's concern. And he said the silhouettes were not fighting or arguing. He did it to appease April. He was not concerned. They asked him what drugs he was using again. He said Xanax, meth, H, weed, booze, meaning alcohol. He stopped for the most part, not using today, struggles with anxiety.
He said he struggled. Oh, excuse me. He said he struggled with anxiety due to the events that happened,
Yep.
not due to being clean, because I think that was somewhat of a
No.
question. And I wrote down at this time it's 6:38 p.m.
Yeah. Said we're with Flint Farmer. All three of them were taken into custody. And the drugs they had on them. Asked him if he got immunity. He said yes. Very concerned about wife and that the fact that she'd get out of jail that day. They asked him a question and he said that he wouldn't make that decision that he had been married for 25 years. Does anybody remember what that was about? I don't remember.
Say that again. He said he wouldn't make that decision.
He was asked a question. Okay, so very concerned about wife and getting out of jail that day. That I wrote, not going to make that decision, married for 25 years. Haven't told a lie since then.
So I think maybe that's when he was saying that, like I said, so much of it leads together because of repetitiveness. I do remember him saying, that his wife, like he had told his wife, I don't know if this is the part, call 911. I remember him saying him and his wife went round and around. He said,
Yeah,
me
but
and his wife.
that's not what this part was about.
Okay.
This had to do with the immunity. Oh well. Said bad things happen to bad people. Then the part comes in where called police, wife wouldn't call. Didn't know until he got home that she didn't call 911.
Okay.
Flint told you she overdosed and he found her hunkered over the next morning. He said yes. Flint came over on 10/11/2016. Don't know for sure. He wasn't there all day. And then I have Karena had H. Tell police probably. Do you remember? He says, I think so. Flint says she was his plug. Could get it if he wanted some. Gave depot on 11/2022. Yep, I remember being there, he said. I knew she had H. Yeah, Flint told me. But he said, and then the defense said, well, were these the pressed type of pills? He said, I don't know.
He said they called them Hulks.
Hulks?
Yeah, like as in the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, he called them Hulks.
Yes.
Are they green?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I believe like the prescription ones will have like when they were referring to 3 sections, like the prescription ones usually have 4 sections. And these is when you were talking earlier, they have 3 sections and they're green, and that's what they kept referring to 3 sections and
Right.
what they called them.
Bars.
Well, they're calling them the Hulks.
Right.
They call them Incredible Hulks.
Yeah, Incredible Hulk. So he re-verified that he worked most of the day, that Karena was on the floor, fully clothed, in a button-up shirt, long sleeve pants. There was no injuries, no blood or scratches. He called it spittle. Defense called it white foam. Neck didn't look out of place. No injuries on Flint. Nope. Oh, the phone that he had of Flint's was a free Obama phone. And this is where it says, did not have access to garage. Nope, nobody had access. Landlord stored beauty supplies for the wife's store in there. So nobody had access to get in there. He was not fearful of Flint. He said the defense really pounded on this. She looked peaceful? Yes. No violent death? No. No trauma? No. Then the prosecutor got back up and just said, Flint offered to assist taking care of. Did Flint offer to assist taking care of Karena's body? No, he was messed up. He couldn't talk. He couldn't help. He explained the reason why 911 not called. Wife said she was scared, that Flint scared her, and he'd do anything for his wife. And they said it's kind of comical because here Flint Farmer knocks on your door with the body over his shoulder and puts it on your floor. And the defense objected. Then they said, isn't your wife protecting you? And this is from the defense part. They said, isn't your wife protecting you? And he said, how is she protecting me? I was at work. And he's like, there's no reason for her to protect me. I was at work when this happened. And that's how it ended. And we didn't get out of there until 7, a little after 7 maybe.
Yeah, right around there.
So it was a very long day. By time everybody got out of there, got home, ate dinner, it was late. So that is why I did not do a live last night. I thought since it was Saturday, I would sleep in and we'd do it today. All right, I'm looking for any questions. Yes, Brad and Alicia's daughter was supposed to testify. I will tell you now that one of the witnesses was in this chat the other night. And they are not supposed, as a witness, and when you get a subpoena, you are not supposed to view any podcasts or anything. And I did report that Friday morning. And I believe that person will no longer be testifying.
That
Mark
in
says,
itself is
yeah,
it's wild to me, to be honest. So, um, it makes you wonder how credible the witness would have been.
right. Mark says, Kathy, I don't believe her either. Even if she was under the influence, Alicia would have remembered her husband burying Karena. So the reason I'm stopping at this, Mark, and thank you for putting that out there. Today, Andrea took myself, Missy and Joni and Bossy to the area where Karena's remains were found. They were less than
Less
100.
than 20. Well, from the edge of the woods, I would say maybe 20 steps into the woods. That's it.
Well, from the woods, but I would say from that trailer,
Mm-hmm.
we're looking at 50 to 70 yards.
If that, yeah.
Not, no, like 3/4 of a football field. That's it.
Very far. You can see it very clear.
And I did take some videos, so you will be able to see how close it is to the trailer. She went and sat on a porch of one of the abandoned trailers while he backed his truck up to those woods. And like you said, it was only like 20 steps in, and dug a hole with a shovel, took her body out and buried it. Just crazy.
Shows no disregard for anyone's life, only self-preservation. Pretty selfish act to do. Like I saw Jerry comment in the chat, he's sitting there, saying how much he loves his wife. Well, you know how many people loved Karena?
Right.
And since we're here, do you remember, this is what I was going to say earlier, is Alicia, when she was testifying, she broke down and said, she had nightmares for
Yeah.
a while of
Months of her
Karena still
being in
being
the
in
shed.
her bed. And hey, that's what happens if you don't do right. I mean, I always say the universe doesn't miss anyone, and you don't want that kind of juju. And if she thinks that, this is just my personal opinion, disclaimer. If she thinks that coming clean now is gonna ease that, those fears and the memories and stuff, I have bad news for her.
Well, and she's like, our lives are ruined, and I can't see my children and I can't see my grandchildren. I'm sorry, but if I was your child, I would not let my children anywhere near you
Right.
after what you've done.
Sure.
And I would
Exactly.
not let you anywhere near me after what you've done. They have to realize that this is not a situation that somebody can just forget and forgive.
And I don't care what they've been through. It is nothing what these people have put the families through. You had information. You could have stopped this a long, long time ago. And they didn't, because like we talked about, it's all about protecting themselves. And Mark, and I spoke for a little while yesterday. I'm sorry, yesterday. And I have to agree with them. People like that should not get this full immunity should not
No.
exist.
No. Kathy says she looked peaceful in a quiet place, and he states the plywood wasn't on top of her, making himself feel better. Yeah, exactly.
And
Um,
I also think that might
he
I
was
think
trying to make us feel like he felt so bad, right?
Well, I also think that might come into play a little bit later. Like that's just my personal opinion. I think that, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Probably, I don't know anyone knows what we're really going to hear from. Surely there had to have been, I don't know if a coroner was called, but I mean, somebody was on scene for those remains. And regardless if they can determine causes of death or not that long afterwards, I don't know. I don't know any of those details personally. Maybe the family does, but that might come into play with some later testimony as to why
Right.
he's saying and adamant that the plywood wasn't on her. I don't know. It very well could be just to ease his guilty conscience.
Yeah. Kathy says, will Flint testify, you think? I don't know. He might just be mental enough to do it.
Narcissistic enough.
Right. We'll wait and see. I can guarantee you that the prosecution will tear him apart if he takes the stand. If he knows what's good for him, he won't. But as Jerry says, they're trying to raise reasonable doubt. So maybe they'll think that the jurors like him and he can be charming enough with them, but I don't think so. What
And
happens Monday?
I have noticed several jurors making a lot of not I don't know if they're making actual eye contact with him, but I have noticed a couple 2 or 3 jurors that observe him and his behavior quite a bit in the
Yes.
courtroom too, which is good.
Yep. Monday, okay, so I tried to get some information and I was able to get a little bit. I know that the prosecution has 6 witnesses left. So, who are those 6 witnesses? We don't know because we don't know who's on the prosecution witness list. I don't think they're going to go quickly. So what I was told is that testimony will be all day Monday. It was previously scheduled that there would only be a half day of court on Tuesday, and that the prosecution case would probably have to go into Wednesday. And then the rest of Wednesday, the defense would get to start their case. And I believe they were supposed to have theirs done in a day because they were supposed to get like Friday. So I'm thinking the rest of Wednesday and possibly a little bit of Thursday, and then they're going to rest, and then the rest of Thursday would be closing statements. And I'm hoping that on Friday they are going to start deliberations. So here's the deal as far as your updates on what's going to happen Monday and Tuesday, okay, in court. I apologize, but I'm not going to be able to update you on Monday and Tuesday until Wednesday night evening. On Monday, I'm going to sit through court. I'm driving back home to Wisconsin so that Tuesday morning I can drive to Minnesota and attend my daughter's function at school as I previously promised. We're going to drive back home to Wisconsin, and then I'm going to drive back to Indiana so that I can be here Wednesday morning for court again. And then Wednesday, I will update you on Monday and Tuesdays court happenings.
I'm going to do my best to take adequate, better notes, great, excellent notes.
And then on Thursday, I will update you on Wednesday and Thursday's testimony. And we'll see what happens from there. I definitely have to be home on the 12th. So if there is not a decision by Friday, Bossy, I'm going to need your help
No problem.
covering the verdict. So,
Yeah, and they were just, I know I'm just going back a little bit because it's great having other people in the chat because it's a lot of information. They were talking about, Troublemaker says, the shed is so small, more like a Rubbermaid storage, not a typical shed as most would think. It was super small.
yes. So, what you guys don't know, and I don't know if I told you this, Bossy, after we left the area where the remains were found, I was taken to several key areas here, and one was where the village pantry was, the alleyway,
Yep,
and where Flint Farmer lived, and I got video of all of it.
excellent. I
I will
know
show
that
you what
area.
they call a shed. I can
Okay.
guarantee you it's not a shed. There's a reason there was only gas cans and weed eaters in there.
Okay, I can imagine what it is. You know, I've seen those types of Rubbermaid storage sheds that you can buy, and I'm pretty sure it's almost like a kit that you put together, and they sell them at like Lowe's and
Yeah.
Menards and places like that.
Yeah, it's I actually walked all the way through from the alley to the front sidewalk.
We couldn't figure out how to even got her in there. It was so small.
Yeah, I can't even figure out how we can't even figure out how they got her in there. It's so small. So, I will be showing that video probably after the verdict. And it'll make more sense to those that are not from the area where everything was. So,
And can we just light up the chat real quick with some purple hearts for Karena, for justice for Karena and her family? That's always appreciated too.
yeah, exactly. Murray says, I think his best bet is to stay in his seat. I think the jury sees through his lies. Through the lies for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, Rubbermaid storage is, yeah, exactly. Let's see. I had a feeling Monday was not going to be enough time. We'll be listening Wednesday for your updates. Yeah. And like you said, it all depends. I mean, some of these witnesses have gone very smoothly and quickly. Some of them haven't. So it all depends on who's testifying, who the 6 people are that are testifying. We'll know more after Monday as far as how many witnesses are left.
Jerry's asking if her cross was still by the telephone pole there.
Just a minute, Jerry. Do you have Venmo, Marv? Yes. Let me. There, it's scrolling across the bottom. Was my cross still? Jerry, your cross is actually right where she was found. They moved it right over the area. So it is there. I've got video of all of it. So thank you everyone for joining Bossy and I. Bossy, you got any last minute thoughts?
Just always send healing, positive energy towards the family. You know, they've been through a lot. thanks for everyone who tunes into Marv and supports everything that she does for our communities around here in Indiana. It's greatly appreciated. And I know that Marv is always appreciative of everyone being in the chat. You know, without you guys, we would just be talking to ourselves, basically. So thank you, and my deepest condolences to the family, and you're going to see justice. I mean, things are going to be righted. The wrongs are going to be they can't be righted, but you'll be able to get a little bit of some type of peace and a stepping stone to start forward and be able to just remember those good memories and things.
Yeah.
You deserve it. You deserve justice.
Thanks, Bossy. And Andrew, absolutely, please take notes between the two of you. It'll be great. And I will see you on Wednesday. Just remember, everybody, justice matters for every victim and their family member and for the true crime community. I'll see you then. Bye.